Hey friend, we are going to rewrite this task. Here's why. This task currently reminds customers every X days about unpaid orders, which is great. However, it initiates that process when the order is created, which means that it doesn't address orders that already exist. And this has tripped up a couple of merchants that we've had over the last week or two who have scads of orders that already exist that they want to be emailing customers about. They don't want to wait another 15 days or whatever to only address the new orders that are coming in. They would like to begin now with reminding customers about unpaid orders. So this points to a weakness in this strategy. This task right here subscribes to Shopify orders create, and it's great for queuing up work to occur after that on a schedule even. It just emits this event every number of days, at which point it performs that same email action. And while queuing up information queuing up actions based on a brand new resource in Shopify is something that totally works, it's not as useful if what you want to do is do work on what already exists. So I point that out just because it's tripped up me a couple of times and merchants as a result. So what we're going to do is rewrite this entirely, and we're actually going to begin from scratch. We're going to start with a conceptual overview, just to make sure I understand what we're going to be doing before I actually start writing code. So what we need to do is be sending emails based on what? An interval, probably. We want to be checking every hour maybe, or every day, to see if there are any orders that currently exist that we should send an email for. And the config in this task right here allows you to configure a number of days or hours to wait. And there's an initial delay that's configurable as well, which means that we've got three different options, two, and there's a third. Two different options that we need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking about the initial delay. We need to be thinking about the interval delay, as in the amount of time between emails that are sent out. What else did I want to do? I also wanted to include a test mode to allow merchants to kind of preview what the thing is actually going to do with live data before they actually send out an unknown number of emails. Was there something else? I don't think so. Number of days to wait, use hours instead of days. It's kind of an awkward way to put this, but that's a thing. Units, maybe we'll make that two options. Units in days, units in hours. Make users pick between the two. The email subject and body, of course. I think this one is rendered moot by the initial delay option. And now that I'm looking at this, we don't actually have initial delay configured. I'm remembering that the merchant that has initial delay configured was just subscribing to orders/create plus like 15 days or something like that. They were just offsetting the beginning of the cycle by that amount of time. So we need to worry about this and this and this, or these two things together, and then test mode. And I think that's it. So what we're going to start with is let's start with a trigger, because the user of Mechanic should be able to hit a button and send out all these emails at once if they wanted to. Probably. Maybe not. Maybe I'll actually remove that. But for the purposes of testing, we'll begin there. And let's convert these to actual options variables. Initial delay, period, number. And declaring all the variables up front is something that I do sometimes in order to control the order in which they're displayed up here, and I'll show you that in a second. Options.interval delay. Units? So what I was saying, this is super invalid JSON over here. So what we're going to do, oops, that's also invalid liquid. There we go. What we're also going to do is say comment preferred Mechanic doesn't have a way for you to explicitly say, I want this option to appear before this other option. Instead, it's implicit. The very first variable under the options, or attribute of the options variable that is found in the task script is what is displayed first. And so if your task script is all over the place, it's often easier to declare all of these things up front in the order that you prefer, so as to have complete control over how this form looks up here. Okay. I know that exactly one of these is required. So what I'm going to do is add a quick validation of my own here. So I'm going to say if this and that, come on, days or hours, but not both. Okay, and we'll see that after I fill out this. And there's my error. Okay. I also want an error if neither of them are selected. So else if this is false and that is false. Okay, and that's what we have here. The delay period should be positive, so let's validate that too. Positive or 0. The initial delay period could be 0 if you want to send an email right away. That's totally fine. And then the interval period between emails should also be a thing. Okay, so if that becomes -5, that'll be a problem. Perfect. Okay, so we've got our initial setup going on here. Let's save just because we're doing things. And we're rewriting this. Oh, I need a valid config before we can save. There we go. Okay, pretty sure our next step is to start building out our query. So in this script over here, in this task script, what we have is a loop through, where are we? Oh, we don't even have a loop, okay. Again, this task only ever operates on a single order at a time, instead of operating on orders in bulk. So we actually don't have anything here that we can reference. Where I'm headed here is the Shopify graphical app. It is the graphical interface to GraphQL. It's an excellent name. And what we're going to use this for is figuring out how we're going to query for our orders. So I hit Command Enter and it fills in all this boilerplate for me. And I'm going to be looking specifically for orders that have a financial status of pending. Or partially paid. That should actually be optional. I've had a couple folks write in recently saying that they want to send an email for either pending or partially paid orders, and that's something that we can make configurable. So financial status is pending. We can check on that in the orders API docs. That's not right. Shopify. I'm not sure where order spoon came from. That's all right. Okay, so we've got our order, we've got our financial status. This is a very large document. Wow. Okay, well, we'll wait on that. Anyway, financial status is pending. If I hit Command Enter, it'll run the thing. Oh, we have our, is this done? Yeah, financial status. So we're looking for pending or partially paid. Those are the two statuses that we're looking for. And we're also looking to make sure that's not canceled. So financial status is pending, and I'll make the second part optional. Financial status partially paid, and then canceled is the other thing. Can I search for that with a query? Financial status. status. That might be the thing I'm looking for. Status is open, right? Yeah. So put that in parentheses. Open or closed. Right? Open or closed? Mostly I just don't want canceled. Ah, okay. Well, there's an answer right there as long as I'm saying it. Okay. That, I think, is what we're looking for. We don't have any orders like that right now. Maybe we should make one. Oh, can I make a pending order here? I don't know if I can. Let's find out. All products, short sleeve tee, mark as pending. No, I can't. That's interesting. Cool. Well, why can't I mark as pending? Huh. That's going to make testing this difficult. Let's take a look at our checkout settings really quick, or payment providers maybe. Do we have the bogus? We do have the bogus gateway. Pardon me while I quickly Google this. I'm gonna give this 2 seconds. Nope, I'm not gonna spend your time on this any further. Okay, cool. Not sure why I can't do that, but that's not gonna slow us down. This is where we are going to start for searching for orders. And we're going to be looping through all the orders that we find to find out if they're created at time or they're processed at time. Those are two different things. We'll talk about that in a second. If their time matches up to the nearest hour or day with an initial delay period plus this. So we're going to be doing some math. Now, an order has a processed at time and a created at time. And the created at time is the time at which the order record arrived in Shopify's database. The processed at time represents, in the case of an imported order, maybe you're coming from a legacy system, the processed at time would be the original time of the original data, as opposed to the time when Shopify learned about it. In our case, I think we're going to be looking for, I don't know, actually. I could totally imagine scenarios in either direction. I think what I'm going to do is roll with processed at, because this always represents the merchant's intent. And if somebody wants to handle that differently, we can handle it when we get there, and that'll just be fine. So we're gonna be looking for the processed at information, and really that's, the email, I suppose. Also, we want to find out what the amount due actually is. So amount, price, total price set. Do we have a better, I suppose total received minus the total price set, yeah. I'm using control space, by the way, to open up this autocomplete menu. Okay, so we're gonna be, the data that we need to work with is the processed at time, the email, because we need to email the customer. We need to find out what price was set for the order entirely and how much we've received so far, so as to, this is the other thing we didn't talk about, so as to calculate the amount that is due, so as to be able to insert that figure into the email itself. And as long as I'm thinking about what we need to insert into the email, I'm also going to grab the order name. Now, we're not seeing anything over here because our query excludes the single order that I've got in my orders list for this store. But if I remove my query entirely, we see this with an ID and a processed at time and a name and a couple prices, and we're good to go. So we begin. Let's start with our GraphQL loop. So GraphQL only allows you to pull down 250 orders at a time. So we are going to head over to Mechanics Help Center and look at our querying Shopify article, because this has some boilerplate that we can use. Nope, bulk operations, force fat it. Here's where we're going. This has some boilerplate that we can use for looping through many pages of a query so as to tally up some total something. In this example, we're tallying up total inventory. In our example, we'll just be collecting orders for which we need to send emails. So let's grab this. And instead of the query that's here, we'll be using the query that we built over in Graphical. Okay. So this will retrieve at most 100 times 250 pages of something. This is the kind of thing where you need to decide for yourself what arbitrarily high limit makes sense for you. I'm going to leave that at 100, and if we find a merchant that has more than 25,000, more than that number of orders that need to send emails for, we can deal with that later, or when we get there. Okay. Okay, and this cursor is generated down here. And we need to get rid of all these mentions of products and replace them with orders. And our order edge becomes, our product edge becomes our order edge. Product becomes our order. And here is where we have a decision to make. We can either perform our logic right here about whether or not this order qualifies for an email, or we can do that outside of this list after we've assembled a list of orders. Let's do it here, mostly because I don't want to keep more orders in memory than I have to. Mechanic won't care about it either way, but this is kind of a, well, is that the way I want to do that? If I'm dealing with a really large amount of data, it's better to filter it here before you stash it in an array for further processing, rather than stash everything you can possibly find into an array and then filter it out later. So yes, I am going to filter it here after all. So up here, instead of total inventory, we're not talking about products. That was just an example. We are going to be talking about orders that deserve an email. Sure. And then what we're going to do here is figure out whether or not this order qualifies. That variable doesn't exist yet. This is just placeholder. Okay, and then, yeah, here's where we perform our logic. This needs to be initialized to false. Otherwise, when it gets set to true in this code that doesn't exist yet, every order after that will also end up in this array. Common mistake. Okay, so now's the part where we need to do math. All right, so our order that comes back has this processed at property. So what we're gonna do is, what? Assign order. All right, here's what's happening here. This date filter right here, or this date format template, something, converts this date into the number of seconds since what's called the Unix epoch. Basically, it's a way of representing any given time as a number of seconds. And it's great when you want to do actual math with date. We use ×1 because this comes back as a string, the result of this filter. And this will coerce that string into an actual integer, which is what we want. We also need to compare this to the current time. So I'm going to do something like this up here, except instead of process.s, it's going to be now s, and instead of this, it's going to be literally the string now. This is a special case right here. When you use the now string and pass through the date filter, the thing that you get back is a date that represents the current time. So now we have that, and it looks like I was sloppy in my pasting. There we go. Yep. Okay. All right, now I get to do math in front of an audience. That's perfect. So here we go. First, we need to account for, we have two numbers that we need to account for. We need to account for the interval delay, the interval period, and then whether it's in days or hours. So let's start with some of this here. Assign interval, initial delay period s. This is going to be this value times a variable that doesn't exist yet, and that's what that's going to be. And then that whole thing. Okay. And then this needs to be one of two things. If the periods are given in days, then the period unit is what? Oh, days. Okay, cool. So that's 60 seconds times 60 minutes in an hour times 24 hours in a day. That's our period unit. Otherwise, if the periods are given in hours, technically this could just be an else statement at this point, but I prefer to be explicit about things and maintain the correctness of it, or enforce the correctness of it up here. So, okay, that's if we're in days. If we are in hours, then it's just 60 times 60. 60 seconds times 60 minutes an hour. Okay, so now we have our interval period in seconds. We have our interval period between emails, also defined in seconds. And yeah, so now we just need to find out if the order is processed at time matches something like this. So probably what we're going to end up doing is taking the processed at time, subtracting it from the current time. So now s, I don't know what to call it, variable. Now s minus processed at time. So now we've got the distance in time between when the order came in and the time it is right now. We also need to remove the initial delay period. So we're going to subtract that too. And now we are left with the amount of time that needs to be broken up into interval periods. And we need to find out if we are actually at a complete period there, or if we're not. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to mod it, Shopify math filter, and the modulo operator, I'm pretty sure it's called mod, maybe it's called modulo. It's called modulo, cool. Divides an output by a number and returns the remainder. That's what I want. So I'm going to be checking for the remainder of the interval period. Now this is never going to exactly equal 0 because we're dealing with seconds here, and it's unreasonable to expect the mechanic is going to run this task at exactly the 0th second of whatever the schedule happens to be. So we need to do a little bit of rounding here, and I think this probably gives, or the specified number of decimals. Okay. How do I want to do this? I think I want to round it to the nearest hour. That's fine. So what we can do, okay. So we can take this, we can divide it by 60 to get the number of, to convert between seconds and minutes, and divide by 60 again to get the number of hours. And then we can round that to the nearest entire hour. So what we have here is period offsets in hours. Yeah. So if this number is 0, then we know that after the initial delay, we've arrived at an even number, like the exact boundary point within this whole interval spacing thing. Believe that's right. We'll have to do some testing. So basically what we're saying is if that's 0, the order deserves an email. I'm decently sure that I'm right about this. However, I may not be. So let's, for the moment, assume that I'm right. And then in another moment, shortly to come, let's assume that I'm wrong and do some testing. So we have orders that deserve an email. And if we, once we get to the end of this for loop, we will have an array of orders that deserve an email, which means that we can say for order in orders that deserve an email, and then we need to add an email action. I can indent that in a little bit. And here's actually also where our test mode comes into play. You'll recall at the very top of the script we had this variable. Jumping back down, if we are in test mode, action echo, come on. And then I'm anticipating what variables I'm going to want down here. Email subject, email order name, okay. And then having anticipated those variables, I'm going to use them here as well. We have our order.email. We have our subject, which doesn't exist yet, but will. And we have our body, which also doesn't exist yet, but also will. We're going to strip that for white space on both sides, convert its white space to line breaks because mechanic accepts HTML formatted email, and then away we go. Okay, so here's where we build the email subject and the email body. This is going to be merchant configurable, so it's going to be an option. It's going to be a required option. And then we're going to sub in some variables that the merchant may want to include. Things like the order name. And merchants tend to think of this as the order number instead. So we're going to call it that, order.name. We also need, as discussed, the amount due. We'll have to calculate that, and that should be it. We're also going to include the email body, which is going to be a multi-line field, which is also required. And we're replacing the same things into it. Okay, so we now have our email subject, our email body. We have an order name, which definitely exists because it came back in our result set. Same thing with email. However, the amount due definitely doesn't exist yet. So we're going to calculate that. And we're going to be testing all this in just a second. So the amount due is formed by the total price set shop money amount property minus the received money amount. So I'm going to grab all these things. I'm holding down Command right now and just double clicking. Cool. Oops, too many escapes. Nope, minus. Okay, so the amount due is the amount minus the received amount, and then we need to convert that to formatted money with units. Shopify's money filter requires you to provide a number of cents instead of a number of dollars or whatever your unit is. Basically, they want you, well, here's what this comes to. That's what we need. So amount due, we are replacing that in here with amount due, and we're good to go. Okay. All right, so what are we doing here? Okay. So for testing, the right idea is always to introduce some stub data that resembles what you're actually going to be getting back, so that all of this logic can be exercised properly, so that at the end of the action preview stage, or the test preview stage, mechanic will show the merchant over here. Mechanic will show the merchant over here what the preview actions are for their preview run. Let's throw in some test data that looks plausible. Order number And let's make sure this still works here too. Plausible enough. Okay, so when we have a preview action, we'll expect to see something that we understand here. Okay, and actually I'm going to, where do I want these to appear? I generally like to have test mode at the very end, so let's grab our options here. Again, holding down Command to get multiple selections. We're gonna put those here. Command, love multiple selections. Okay. So now our test mode box has moved to the end. Here are these. Awesome. So for populating our stub data for preview, what we're going to do is right here, we're going to clobber this result variable with something that actually exists. But we're only going to do that in preview mode. Parson, oh, yeah, that's because there, I said parson. I don't have anything in there. So the easiest way to do this is to run your query and then grab something from graphical that represents what you're looking for. So mechanics, let's get back down to where we're looking. Mechanics Shopify filter through which we run our GraphQL query returns just exactly what comes back from Shopify. So this is all JSON that we can use. Technically, we could also include this, but this is not important at all. Mechanic takes care of managing the API throttle automatically. Love that. Okay, so our result JSON looks like this. And we need to close that and add one more closing brace. All right, now let's make this a little bit less specific to my exact store. We'll say the total price set is 50 units, and we'll say that the amount received is 10 units. The money with currency filter always uses the currency that is set to the default for the store. So this won't work as well for multi-currency orders. What it will end up doing is just always displaying the amount due in the store's native currency. So we have this. The other thing that we need to change is our processed at time. Because we want to be testing with a value that definitely occurs at a, we want to, well, let me explain by example. Our now value in preview mode needs to change to something deterministic. Or something that is known, I suppose, something static. So let's call it 2019, let's call it the future. 2020, 01, 01, at midnight. Yeah. So now we know in preview mode that the current time is January 1st of 2020. That will be a day at midnight of that time. Which means that if I come down here and say that the processed at time is similar, well, let's set ourselves up for success here. Let's say that we are waiting for 5 days and that we are waiting for, no, let's make this more interesting. We're waiting for 2 days and then we're sending emails every 5 days after that. So that means that our first email sent should be expected to occur on the 3rd at midnight, because that is 2 days after the time that the order was, or that's 2 days after, or no, 2 days before. Yeah, okay. So actually, I'm gonna make this the 3rd, and I am going to say that our order was created at midnight on January 1st instead. Now this is UTC time, which is not the store's local time zone. So what I'm going to do is take the store's local time zone, and what am I going to do? I need to have this in this string. Okay, so the date filter always uses the store's local time zone, which means that this is in the store's local time zone. When the date filter parses some data, it's cognizant of its format. So the date filter will know this is in UTC and not the store's local time zone, and it will adjust accordingly. Which means that I can afford to just forget about time zones completely and say that I can just say this, honestly, because I know that the processed at time is going to be passed through the date filter down below. So our processed at time is January 1st at midnight, and our now, hypothetically, is the 3rd, which is 2 days later at midnight. If we've written a code correctly, we should have an email. Oh my gosh, we have an email. Okay, so here's what's happening. I've either written my code correctly or it's broken. Let's find out which is which. I mean, the easiest way to find that out is to change this number right here. And yeah, okay, I might have done it correctly. So the 3rd, we get an email. If we add 5 days to that, we get an email. If I add one more day to that, I don't. Wonderful. If I add 5 days to that, I get another email. What else? Let's go back to the 3rd. If I add an hour, I don't get an email. If I add a minute, I also don't get an email. Okay. So that points to, okay, so that is something that we'll have to fix. Because being a minute off should be just fine. An hour off is less acceptable, but a minute off should be totally fine. Yeah, so something's not quite right here. So let's say we are even 25 minutes off. Yeah, and let me make sure that mechanic is understanding the time as I give it. So let's say action echo, and we're going to call it now state. I hope I remember that correctly. Okay, so mechanic currently thinks that the time, that's the current time. Perfect. Midnight at 25 minutes. So that was interpreted correctly, which means that we've just got some math work to do. So we're at 25 minutes down. This should round down to the nearest hour being 0, and that should just be fine. So let's see what's going on down here. I'm scrolling in the background because I want to see what happens with this preview pane behind me. So we're coming down here to processed at S. We have our period offset. Okay, so let's echo this. And then our period offset is 1500. That's a lot of hours, which makes me think that it's not actually in hours. What happens if I take the rounding off? Oh, maybe it's because when you divide by an integer, you get an integer? No. Oh, okay. This tells me that I'm using maybe the wrong filter. Oh, there we go. Divide by. Divide by. Divide by, is that right? This is just not having any effect whatsoever. Divided by. Really? Really, Shopify? I guess we're reading this in English. We want to say 5 divided by. I guess that works. You say 5 minus 6, you say 5 plus 6, you say 5 divided by 6. Okay, I get it. All right, so we have divided by 60, we have divided by 60. we don't even need a round apparently, because that is self-rounding to 0, because when you divide by an integer, you get an integer. Well, when you divide by an integer each time. So divided by 60, that's that. We round it to 0. Okay. Which means that if I remove this, I should see an email instead. Yep, there we go. Okay. Let's tweak this slightly. So if I, where are we? If I go from 25 minutes to 45 minutes, yep, so that rounds up to another hour, so that's a thing. Okay, awesome, we are in fantastic shape. Let's change this from days to hours. Choose either days or hours, but not both. Fine, all right, periods are now given in hours. So let us then switch to hours. Okay, so we know that our order came in on the 1st. We are waiting 2 hours. Did I do this right? We are waiting 2 hours and then every 5 hours after that, yeah. So, I mean, ideally this would have just worked, but apparently not. Oh, that's 2 minutes, not 2 hours, okay. 2 hours, yay! 2 hours and 29 minutes. 2 hours and 39 minutes, nope, perfect. 2 hours plus 7 hours, or 5 hours is 7, perfect. Plus another 5 is that, perfect. Perfect, awesome. We are in good shape. Okay, so the only thing that we need to do left is to, or the only thing we need to do left, the only thing that we have left to do is make sure that our task always renders preview data, regardless of what the configuration looks like. So to explain what I mean by that, right now we've demonstrated that at 12 o'clock we will send an email, but if I change this to literally anything else, not literally everything else, but if I tweak this slightly, the email no longer shows up, which means that I need to calculate a current time that is informed by what's happening here. So what I'm going to do is take the, what am I going to do? I'm going to take the current time of this, and I am going to calculate this value as a result. So I'm going to take now s, I'm going to subtract the interval delay period. Where are we? Here. And I'm going to subtract an interval period as well. I could subtract a multiple of this, and that would also work. But this is the least complicated while still involving this number. H, N, S. I've had to look this up a million times. I'm actually really happy that I remembered it this time. Okay, so we've got we're subtracting our initial delay period, we are subtracting an additional interval period. Again, this could be a multiple. In fact, I'm actually going to make it a multiple. And I'm going to be funny about it. That variable is just this. Actually, yeah, let's do that. That feels right. Okay, so we're subtracting an arbitrary multiple, and there we are. Cool. So let's think about cases here. So if an order is suddenly paid or canceled or transitioned to any other financial status besides pending or partially paid, it will no longer be returned by this query, and we should be good to go. If an order is canceled, it will also not be returned by this query. I don't remember if I already said that or not, which means that we don't need to think about having to filter by order status anywhere except right here, which is super nice. What else do we need to think about? Oh, partially paid. This was supposed to be optional, so let's make it optional. If options I could build this query string separately, but honestly, this is so easy and so easy to read that I'm just going to do it here. Yeah, okay, cool. So we now have this option as well. And, oops, I feel like I misspelled Boolean. Yes, I did. Boolean. All right, so we have that option as well. And I am going to put that here. And I have double. Okay. Okay, phenomenal. So now we are including partially paid orders or not. We have a delay period that can be arbitrary and our preview still works. We have validation. Oh, this needs to be greater than 0. Otherwise, nothing makes sense. Okay, so let's add a validation there. The interval period must be at least 1. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So here's a quirk. The error that we're seeing up here is generated because this tag right here generates a JSON object that looks like this. Nothing about this JSON object prevents the rest of this document from actually evaluating, which means that what does this mean? Well, this means that I either need to do a complete job, which I am going to do. I either need to reset this somehow, or I need to skip the rest of the document if our options are invalid. I guess we can do that. Assign options valid equals false. Actually, we'll assume the positive. And only invalidate here. Oops. Oh, you know what we didn't actually test, at least in our preview mode? We didn't test mode. Cool. So if we use test mode, oh, we also didn't finalize the variables. Test mode, okay. So when test mode occurs, instead of an email, we receive an echo statement containing the order name, the order email, the order subject. So-and-so USD is still outstanding. That's great, but I'm pretty sure that should be $40 US. So let's wrap this up by checking on that. So we have our total price set, our total received, which looks like this. We received 10 out of 50. So what's going on? Our amount due, oh, that's because that variable doesn't exist. We need to look at order.totalPriceSet. There you go, 40 USD. Okay, phenomenal. I hit save, I hit grant, and we're set. I am going to hold off on actually testing this because for some reason that I have not yet discovered, the checkout settings for the store don't allow me to create an order that is pending. So I'm actually really happy with how we've tested this though so far using just preview mode. So if you have any questions, drop me a line, either with the chat thing here or some other way. And yeah, thanks for being here. Have a phenomenal day. Cheers. Note, I realized that we didn't come back to the subscriptions area. So what we need to do here is add an hourly subscription. Honestly, that's it. Mechanic, scheduler, hourly. That's it. Whether we're in days or hours, doesn't matter. This task will run hourly. Where is it? Hourly, as we see reflected here, hourly. And it will send out an email for whatever order matches or for whatever orders align with the current hour of the day. And that's it. So now we're done for real. Have an awesome day.